to the top of WWE can be a long, arduous process for many. Very few are given the keys to the kingdom right from the off, and more often than not, a performer has to earn their way up the card. This can take weeks, months, or years, and while gradual improvement and paying dues can gradually change the minds of management and fans, an eye-catching breakout performance can go a long way towards speeding the process up. It's heartening to see a superstar go out there and rock it, putting in a shift that helps to alter perceptions and set them on their way for bigger and better things. A wrestler can have many solid, even good matches, but you know a true breakout performance when you see it, even if the magnitude of it only really becomes apparent in retrospect. From manager to grappler, tag teamer to single star, and mid-carder to main event, we've seen plenty of these performances throughout history, but few have had the same impact as the following. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 amazing WWE breakout performances. Join us! Number 10, Bret Hart vs. Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam 1991. Bret Hart has always been good. You only need to listen to Bret Hart in any interview ever to figure that one out. After splitting from the Anvil, the Hitman had a chance to prove himself on a night where all the stars aligned for him perfectly. And perfect is the key word, because Bret was able to announce himself as a singles wrestler by beating one of his favorite opponents, Mr. Perfect, for the Intercontinental title. Not only was it a major pay-per-view back in the days when there were only 4 of them per year, but it was taking place in Madison Square Garden with Bret's parents in attendance watching on. Despite being in absolute agony thanks to a debilitating back injury, Curt Hennig did everything in his power to put on a classic and help give the excellence of execution his big moment. It is an incredible match and an important moment in Bret's career. He would from there solidify himself as one of the best Intercontinental champions ever before using that success to launch himself toward the WWE title. Number 9, Shelton Benjamin in the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 21. Like Bret, Shelton Benjamin was also viewed as something of a tag guy, having successfully teamed up with Charlie Haas in Team Angle / the world's greatest tag team. After being traded from SmackDown to Raw in the 2004 draft, however, the ultra-athletic amateur standout was given the chance to prove himself solo. He was awarded big victories over Triple H early in his run and won the IC title from Chris Jericho before long. Benjamin always looked good and his matches were never anything less than enjoyable, but he had to wait until WrestleMania 21 to truly steal the show. One of the 6 entrants in the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, Shelton seized the opportunity to steal the spotlight by entering a performance that wowed everyone watching, busting out moves and spots that nobody had seen before and hitting every single one of them beautifully. When you consider the rest of the field was made up of Jericho, Christian, Kane, Benoit, and winner Edge, it's an impressive feat indeed that most fans were raving about Benjamin once it was over. While his exploits didn't result in some sort of renewed push and world title charge, it did solidify the gold standard as one of the most exciting stars on the roster, a man whose matches you did not want to miss. Number 8, Mankind vs. Shawn Michaels at In Your House Mind Games. Before signing with Titan Sports in 1996, Mick Foley had enjoyed plenty of breakout moments in his battle-scarred career. His Falls Count Anywhere belter with Sting from WCW's Beach Blast 92 comes to mind, as to his flesh-scarring efforts in 1995's IWA King of the Deathmatch tournament. The WWE audience, by and large, didn't exactly know about these, and besides, Foley was now portraying a completely new character in the form of Mankind. His first feud with The Undertaker got him off to a good start, and the two had some enjoyable matches, but it took him until Mind Games in Your House to have a great one. And his opponent wasn't the Dead Man, but the Heartbreak Kid, as the masked weirdo attempted to win the WWE title and overcome Shawn Michaels as the Monster of the Month. Something for both to do in between major matches, and not the recipient of a long and thoughtful build, they nonetheless went out there and killed it. While Foley's stock was raised immeasurably by going almost 30 minutes with the best wrestler in the world at that time, sorry Bret, Shawn himself also benefited tremendously, as he was able to show another tougher side of his pretty boy self. Number 7, Bianca Belair vs. Sasha Banks at WrestleMania 37's Night 1. WWE took full advantage of their first show in front of fans for over a year by putting Sasha Banks' defense of the SmackDown Women's title against Bianca Belair on last. Having made her main roster debut a year earlier, the ultra-athletic Bianca had been a highlight of WWE's televised output and was a well-deserved and welcomed winner of the 2021 Women's Royal Rumble match. Recent history has shown us that winning it by no means guarantees you're going to triumph at the Showcase of the Immortals, and there was every possibility that the boss was going to walk out of Raymond James Stadium still champ. Thankfully, BELAIR got the historic win following a terrific bout that told a fantastic story and showed the best of both women. Banks deserves much credit for clearly going above and beyond to make the EST look as good as possible en route to her victory. It's early days yet, of course, but the feeling at the end of WrestleMania 37 Night 1 was that Bianca Belair was now established at the top of the women's division, paving the way for fresh matches and storylines. Number 6, The Rock versus Triple H at SummerSlam 1998. He came good in the end, and then some, but The Rock's early days in WWE were tough going. His bland babyface act did him no favors in the Attitude Era, but a heel turn and an alliance with the Nation of Domination started to turn things around. Once the Brahma Bull had outgrown Farouk, D'Lo and the boys, began referring to himself in the third person and took up catchphrase collecting, he looked like he could be a genuine headliner. Like Bret Hart 7 years earlier, The Rock had all the right ingredients for a breakout performance as he defended his Intercontinental title against Triple H in Madison Square Garden at SummerSlam 98. This actually helped make stars of both the Great One and the Game, though it took a little while for Hunter to truly take off in the same way as his opponent. Triple H won, but would be too injured to actually defend the title, so while it was a big match and great moment for him, it was actually The Rock who came out of the whole deal better, since he would say goodbye to the IC title scene and win the WWE title at Survivor Series, never looking back. I hear he's in films now, or something. Number 5, Stephanie McMahon and TRISH Stratus at No Way Out 2001. Trish was a fitness model who was hired mainly to function as eye candy for the horny Attitude Era crowd. Stephanie McMahon was a manager who rarely wrestled and, when she did, used more smoke and mirrors than your average funhouse. The two became embroiled in an entertaining feud centered around Trish's budding romance with the billion-dollar princess's genetic jackhammer of a father. Needless to say, when the two were booked together at No Way Out 2001, expectations weren't exactly high. And that helped them out tremendously, because they surprised everyone with a cracking, full-on scrap that was always engrossing and full of intensity. They were out there for 8.5 minutes, which was practically an Iron Man match for the so-called divas in those days, and they never once looked like they didn't know what they were doing. Stratus became a multiple-time women's champion later and is nowadays regarded as one of the best ever, but this was the first real hint that Trish could perhaps be a bit more than a pair of booming bosoms in a tight shirt. She could actually go. And that's the same for Stephanie, who, despite what you may think of her, is one hell of a sports entertainer and always delivers in big matches. Number 4, Steve Austin versus Bret Hart at Survivor Series 96. If you were to believe WWE's convenient version of history, then Stone Cold Steve Austin won the 1996 King of the Ring, delivered his iconic 316 promo, and from there, it was a non-stop bullet train to the WWE title and record-setting business. In reality, that wasn't the case, and Austin wasn't even booked on the next pay-per-view, instead wrestling Yokozuna on the SummerSlam pre-show free-for-all. The Texas Rattlesnake was getting over thanks to his explicit exploits on television, but he still wasn't properly featured on pay-per-view, at least until Survivor Series, where he squared off with Bret Hart. Handpicked by the Hitman to be his first major match back after a long hiatus, Austin made the most of the situation and put in a great performance in what was his best WWE match to that point. The two had a 30-minute stunner, pun intended, with the Bionic Redneck as the heel dictating the pace and leading the action, getting himself over before falling to a crafty veteran move. He may not have won, but he did not look like a loser either, and used the result to hound the Pink and Black Attack for a WrestleMania rematch. And to think, Austin started the year as the ringmaster and was almost given the name Fang McFrost. Number 3, the Hardys and Edge and Christian at No Mercy 1999. When the Hardys and Edge and Christian got backstage after their show-stealing ladder match at No Mercy 1999, Mick Foley greeted them with congratulations and told them that they had just went from WWE wrestlers to WWE superstars. He then smiled, gave them a firm handshake, and passed them their diploma. And Foley wasn't wrong, because the match put both teams on the map and took them to the next level in the eyes of the fans. Before it, they were just four ridiculously talented guys trying their hardest to break through and establish themselves in a jam-packed landscape where many others were battling for TV time. They had wowed in matches together at King of the Ring, SummerSlam, and on Raw and SmackDown, but those bouts were typically short and didn't have much chance to linger in the memory. No Mercy, however, was different, because not only was it a pay-per-view and a favourable stipulation, but they had time and the creative freedom to do what they needed to do to get over. Jeff in particular gave a preview of what was to come from him with his wild and reckless bumps and fervent originality. The following night on Raw, the audience gave both teams a well-deserved standing ovation. Number 2, Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker at No Mercy 2002. They scouted him in college, signed him to the most lucrative developmental deal in history just to train in Kentucky, and then they strapped the rocket onto him from the moment he debuted on WWE television in March 2002. There were always big plans and high expectations for Brock Lesnar, but that didn't mean he was guaranteed to be everything they wanted him to be. After winning King of the Ring and then beating The Rock for the undisputed title at SummerSlam, Brock was traded to SmackDown and put in a program with locker room leader The Undertaker. Their first bout at Unforgiven was alright, I guess, but the double DQ did nothing for the next big thing. Their next match, however, firmly cemented Lesnar as the guy, as he obliterated Big Evil in an exhausting and gruesome Hell in a Cell match. Looking not just totally dominant, but also assured and well-rounded, Brock truly appeared to be the main event player that he was positioned as, someone capable of putting on a classic and doing business after being on TV for just half a year. The definitive victory against WWE's gatekeeper in the main event of a pay-per-view told fans that Brock Lesnar was, in fact, the real deal, and he was here to stay. For another 18 months anyway. Number 1, Randy Orton versus Mick Foley at Backlash 2004. Young, talented, athletic, handsome, good-looking, aesthetically appealing, attractive, hunky, Randy Orton was certainly a tasty dish. Hot prospect in his early WWE days. Emphasis on hot. But no matter how smooth he was or how confident he became, some fans couldn't quite get past his GQ appearance. He needed something to give him a harder edge. A program with Mick Foley, the man who had done so much to make Evolution leader Triple H years earlier, was just the ticket. The hardcore legend decided to work a program with the Legend Killer, culminating in an Intercontinental title hardcore match at Backlash 2004. While young Randy had put on some great performances and been in some decent matches previously, this was the bout that signaled that we were watching a future world champion, a Legend Killer who would one day become a legend himself. He bled, he took a bump on thumbtacks, he got thrown off the stage. Hell, Foley did just about everything he could to make Orton earn it that night, while also taking a beating himself, of course. Just a few months later, Randall Keith would begin to turn babyface and become World Heavyweight Champion. Put simply, it wouldn't have been possible without his Backlash war and the efforts of Mrs. Foley's beardy baby boy.